The fifth thing, Gary, for this week, thing number five, we're talking about compounding long-term investing. Part of what we've adjusted on this show is doing a little bit more from an investor knowledge education standpoint. So for this particular thing, thing number five of the pivot week issue, Gary, in it for the long term, compounding is your friend. Gary, tell us why compounding is something that all investors need to know about.
So Rob, I think the point you're making is a really important one. One of the changes we've made recently on the five things is for thing five, we want to provide people with some investor education. We want beginning and novice investors to start to understand basic and important concepts in investing. It's one of the ways that we hope to improve financial literacy and help people get better financial outcomes, a better material quality of your life throughout your whole life. And for this material, we're leaning heavily on my old friend and partner, Raji Khabbaz from Learn Wall Street. Learn Wall Street's dedicated to helping novice investors and young people in particular learn about investing, to learn about the stock markets. And when Raji writes about compounding, he gives this great image, which, we'll put up on the screen. Imagine a snowball rolling down a mountain, and as it gets larger and larger, it picks up more and more snow, and eventually, you end up with, something that going from a small snowball to a gigantic boulder, or potentially an avalanche. And the point is that even if you start small, over enough time, you can pick up size. And so the reason compounding matters is because over time you earn a return on your return. And so, I think it was Andrew who wrote this section, and the example he gave I thought was a good one. Imagine that you invest $1,000, and let's just say every year you're going to earn, 5%. So at the end of your first year, you'd have $1,050. And so after that first year, you'd earn a return not on the original $1,000, but on $1,050. And so your return on that second year would be more than $50. And that, it sounds like a very small change. Okay, well, 5% of, $50 is $2.50. Does it matter? Yeah, it matters, because the following year you're earning a return on $1,102, and that grows over time. And over time, as you add more capital and reinvest dividends, your growth becomes exponential. And basically what it means is, when you're thinking about investing, right? There's that old expression, right? The best time to do it was yesterday. The second best time to do it is today. What you want to do is give yourself the longest possible time frame to be investing. And the reason is because you can take advantage of compounding in doing so. It's by taking advantage of a longer time frame that you give yourself the opportunity to earn higher and higher returns, And in fact, I was on a podcast a week ago and talking about an investment that my dad had made for me, when I was a little kid. And it was, under $250. And I did nothing with it. I just let it sit there. And unfortunately, I had to pay taxes on it over decades. But decades later, even though I'd had to pay taxes on it, that investment was worth more than $15,000, because my dad had put $250 away, when I was a baby. And these are the kinds of things that can happen where, you can take, if you're thinking to yourself, well, wait, what? I don't have enough money to invest. Why would I just put away a couple $100? It's not enough to matter. And the answer is, well, it won't be enough to matter next year, and it won't be enough to matter in 2 or 3 years. But if you invest it over decades, it could be enough to matter down the road. And that's why you start early and stick with it. It's compounding. It's being able to earn a return on your return that will help you over time. And so, I think Raji's advice here is great advice. It's advice that my dad understood and took. It's advice that, I use because I've been investing since, I was pretty young. and stick with it. This is what I do all day, every day. And so, I'd encourage you guys to start to think about it. And, if things are a little bit tight, don't be embarrassed. If you can put together, I don't know, $50. So invest $50 and you don't have to feel badly about that or be embarrassed about it. Over time that can grow.
Yeah, there was a quote in the five things, Gary, that I'm going to read from Albert Einstein. He famously said, "Compound interest is the eighth wonder of the world. He who understands it earns it. He who doesn't pays it." I think that's a great way to kind of close out this segment, and wise words from obviously Mr. Einstein. With that being said, that concludes this week's version of the five things, the pivot week issue. As we mentioned, we'll be sure to stay in tune with everything happening over the course of this week and leading up to next week's version of the five things. Gary, any closing thoughts from you?
Well, one key thing to add um, on this last point, which is, a lot of people like to dollar cost average into index funds like the S&P 500 or the NASDAQ. The tickers on that are SPY and QQQ. And if you want to do that, that's totally fine. There's nothing wrong with that, with investing a little bit at a time, dollar cost averaging, which just means every week or every month you put the same amount of money in. Um, and it's okay to try to build wealth slowly. At Deep Knowledge Investing, we take a different approach. We're taking very concentrated positions in growing companies with the potential to appreciate substantially. In just 4.5 years, we've had a large number of positions up more than 100%. And the last two stock picks we put in the portfolio, we think the opportunity is there for them to be up 5 times to 10 times over the next 5 years. And that's fine too. If that works, those returns are going to be enormous. If you, put $1,000 in something and you can turn it into $10,000 over a few years, that'll do well for you. But whether you want to own the index or individual stocks, just remember it's okay to ask for help. Reach out to us, we'll help you. Or if you have a friend who's a financial advisor, talk to them. There are lots of great places to go for help. Don't hesitate. Don't feel badly about it. Don't be embarrassed. Whatever you're doing in this, it's better to start, and it's okay to start small, and it's okay to ask for help. Final point on all of this, Rob, is, I just want to emphasize something we've talked about a lot on the show. So the Fed is going to cut rates this week. And Congress is not going to cut spending. And regardless of who wins the election in November for both the White House and for Congress, nobody's going to cut spending. And what that means is we're going to be looking at long-term inflation. And the way to think about inflation is a reduction in the purchasing power of the dollars that you own. So just be prepared. Understand that is what's coming. And, at Deep Knowledge Investing, one of the things we've done really well is help prepare people for that and actually make money from it. So, if you need help with that, again, feel free to reach out. There is nothing you or I or any of us can do to stop future inflation. It is coming, but that doesn't mean that there aren't things that we can do to protect our homes and our retirement money or your portfolio or your financial health. It doesn't have to be all bad for you individually, even if it might not be good for the country.